All right. Well, I guess, we'll just kick it off then by saying welcome back. I don't think back in February any of us could have expected or even visualized this kind of situation happening, where we wouldn't be able to see each other in person and we'd be down for a couple months. So again, welcome back. We should probably just do a quick round. I mean, I think everyone knows there's some folks on here that maybe everyone doesn't know. And of course, Robin is new, so I think we definitely want to give her a chance to at least say a little bit about herself and why she joined the group. So you want to add anything to that, Sonia?
No, that's great. Maybe we should call on people as they show up in your list to say hello, because it gets a little confusing. Everybody's in a different order on everybody's screen.
That sounds good. Okay, how about Alec?
Yeah, so we're just doing introductions.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name's Alec. I'm probably not the newest BPAC member anymore, but I'm definitely newer. And yeah, I'm a Western student, love to ride my bike, and yeah, involved, I guess I'm involved also on the county's transportation or climate impact advisory committee's transportation working group too. So yeah.
Thanks, Alec. Eileen? Eileen, we lose you already? Are you muted? I see you, but you're muted, I think.
She's, yes.
I see you, but we can't hear you.
She hasn't turned on her video.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and unless she unmutes, it won't switch to her.
Her name, so they know she's there.
Well, okay, let's come back to Eileen then. How about
Eileen is unmuted, so but I'm not sure what's going on, why we can't hear her, but she is unmuted.
Okay, she just walked off. Maybe she's having IT problems on her end. Let's go with Gary then next.
Hey, Gary Malik, been on the committee about 2.5 years, I think. And yeah, let me know if need any more information.
Thanks, Gary. How about Patrick?
I don't know how long I've been on, but and I don't ride my bike that much, but I like bicycles. I like people being able to move around and walk and ride bikes. And so for years I've supported this. And I sneak around Birch Bay and I put on the telephone poles a little thing that says bike route, because nobody's supplying us with signs for that.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's go with Sunny.
Sorry, I was a little bit late. What am I saying?
Oh, we're just doing a quick intro just to refamiliarize. We have a couple newer folks just to kind of make sure we all know who each other.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm Sunny, and I've been on the committee for about 3.5 years, and everyday bicycle commuter, walker, and bus rider.
Thanks. Okay, are you doing better here, Eileen? Should we try again?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I've been on the committee for 4 years, almost 4 years, and I was chair for 2 years. I do a lot of cycling about 5 days a week, mostly for errands these days, and walk every day. So anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Eileen. How about Kyle?
Hi, is this working?
Yeah, we can see you.
I don't know how this works.
We can see you.
The only Zoom I know is a kids program from like the 70s. You guys ever watch that? Anyway,
We're gonna Zoom.
I drive a Corvette every day, everywhere, and I'm just a simple guy. I do like bikes. You guys all look good on your bikes when you see you out there. My Corvette.
Yeah. Got a 4-barrel on it.
Yeah. 12 barrels.
Just disregard everything Kyle said. We're moving on. Thanks, Kyle. How about Pete?
Hey, I'm Pete Sharp. I've been on the committee just for about, I don't know, a few months, 3 or 4 months, I guess. And I like bikes. I ride bikes a lot. I just got home from bike commuting just now. I stood up, you would be able to tell, but I'll spare you. So that's it. I'm excited to be part of the group.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I think Pete is the newest member other than Robin, and we'll do Robin next since she's the newest member.
All right. Hi, I sat in on a meeting, but I wasn't officially yet, and I have my papers now. So that's good, right? And since that first meeting, I have become a mountain biker. And so I just got home for a 3-hour ride, which was unbelievably fun. So now I'm like a totally different biker than I ever have been before in my life. I bike commuted in Seattle through the 80s and 90s. That was fun. And, but I'm interested, I was asked to say why I also, in addition, since I'm new, why I joined the group. And I joined the group because I don't like biking in rural areas on high-speed roads with narrow shoulders, or with any shoulders, really. It's very hard, and I would really, really love to be able to bike out to the Lummi area or Ferndale or any number of places, and I won't do it right now because I don't like it.
Amen.
Right. Thank you.
Robin, what's your what neighborhood do you live in?
I live in Seaholm.
Okay.
And we should probably hear from Jason and John as well. Jason, do you want to say hey?
I'm Jason Art. I'm the Public Works Liaison to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I work to coordinate the meetings and coordinate between the committee and Public Works.
Oh, and is that Mike there with you?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Thank you. Traffic engineer for the county. And I'm also the one that I enjoy working with Jason quite a bit. He's pretty good.
Yeah, we put up with him. He's a pretty good guy.
He's good.
No, he's extremely helpful. And I think John is the last one here. John?
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Sure. So Jim Karcher, who's our county engineer, and myself are on the line here. And I guess my hope is that that I can have an opportunity at some point to share with you the conversation I had with the council yesterday about the goings on at Marine Drive and the BNSF bridge and that sort of thing, and then leave you in the good hands of Mike and Jason and Jim. It's important that that they have responsibility for their jobs, and their boss, who knows a heck of a lot less than they do, stays out of their territory. So yeah, so we want to honor them in all of this. But to the extent that you would like an update on that conversation with the council, I'd be happy to offer it.
Yes, thank you. And for those of you who don't know, John is the director for Public Works, County Public Works.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Should have said that.
No, no problem. Sonia, anything else on intros and welcomes?
Did we hear from Jim Karcher?
No, we didn't.
Hi, this is Jim Karcher, and I'm also a Public Works employee. My capacity as county engineer since March of this year, and pretty much a couch potato.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so if that's all the welcomes and intro, one other thing before we kind of get into the meat of the meeting, we wanted to approve the February meeting minutes. Does anybody have any problems with those as they are written?
I didn't have a problem with it, but one very minor thing that was a correction on 4B, Cope Road is actually KOPE rather than COPE.
Okay.
Thank you, Eileen. We'll make that change.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes with that change.
I move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thanks, Robin. All those in favor, you can raise your hand or say aye. Perfect.
I'm perfect.
Aye.
Hey.
Okay. Minutes passed. Thank you.
Hey, Sonia, did you want to, so the next major topic or category is the updates on BPAC activities that we have been involved with, both Sonia and I, but of course anyone else as well, since over March through May, since when we've all been on hiatus. And the first one that we wanted to mention is some meetings that Sonia and I have attended in the last couple of months. Sonia, do you want to?
Yeah, actually, Stephen, I was going to ask if maybe we should just rearrange the agenda so that John can speak.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Maybe we could do Marine Drive first, and then everyone related to Marine Drive can leave if they need to. And then you and I can do the rest of the updates with the group.
Good suggestion.
Okay.
Before John speaks, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes.
John, since I was kind of the rabble rouser that got a lot of this stuff going, do you want me to preface it, or do you want to just include the kind of the backstory and all that?
I would love it if you would preface it. That would be wonderful.
All right. So if you're ready for that, Sonia, I will do that.
Sounds great. Go ahead, Gary.
So I had on my own, not through the committee, worked with the Washington State Utilities and Transportation Committee several times to improve mainly the crossings that I encounter on my bike commute into work, which takes me over the railroad tracks, both on a bridge and also by Bennett Drive. And it had some good success calling them and saying, hey, the pavement here is falling apart. And they were very very active in getting in there and taking care of stuff. And actually, if any of you have ridden over the crossing out there at Bennett Drive recently, it's really improved and it was great. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll see if we can get some action on the lack of a safe crossing of the railroad tracks there on the Marine Drive Bridge, or at the ends of Old Marine Drive. Some of you may remember I gave a presentation to this committee, a PowerPoint presentation, back when we were meeting face to face. Anyway, so I reached out to her and thought I got the ball rolling, which instead it kind of blew up in my face, if I can say that. Whereas in my PowerPoint presentation, if you remember, I said certain folks in the local community out here in Fort Bellingham community would cross down below at the ends of Old Marine Drive, and it was labeled a private crossing. They've since taken down that sign, but anyways, when the lady from the UTC got wind that people were crossing tracks illegally, she got a hold of the railroad came out and they put in huge concrete barriers, took out the little footbridge that one of the neighbors had built, and put in no trespassing signs on both sides, big, huge signs, even spray painted no trespassing on the rails themselves. And it was definitely like, don't cross here ever again. Which obviously wasn't my intended course. So after that happened, I reached out to John Hutchings, telling him what was going on. And one thing I did learn through this process was, for many years, I would approach, as a citizen, not a member of this committee, I would approach the county and say, hey, have you ever thought of doing an at-grade crossing of the railroad tracks below the bridge at the ends of Old Marine Drive? And I'm just paraphrasing. I was always told, look, the railroad won't allow that. That's not going to happen. And so in my conversations with Betty Young, is the person, my contact with the UTC, she actually laid out that there is a process, which was interesting. And it would be the county going, and John might give a better answer or explain this a little better, but Gary's definition is the county would approach the UTC and start a process to request this at-grade crossing, and both the railroad and the county would appear before a jury, if you will, or a committee, judicial committee, and a decision would be made. And I thought, well, what do we've got to lose? And I asked John, can you look into this, please, to see if we can approach the UTC and get a crossing there? And John, received my email. I know he's a very busy man, and I will let him pick it up from there.
Thank you, Gary. Where do I start this conversation except to recognize, I think that this discussion about the fate of crossings on the railroad has been around for decades. And there's a reason why it hasn't been solved thus far, and that is because it's, no matter how you slice it, it's a very, very heavy lift. And it's a very heavy lift because, for a couple of reasons. One, and the most sort of perhaps egregious, is simply that the corporations that are railroads exist in federal law, and they exist and they operate under that federal law in a way that for all intents and purposes exempts them from the influence of local governments. And the result of that is that not only is it incumbent on the local governments, as Gary pointed out, to petition them for access on their right-of-way, much like we do locally for access on road right-of-way. You would come through your local government. It's necessary to go through the corporation that is the railroad that owns and operates that right-of-way under federal law, which extends a tremendous amount of control over that right-of-way to the railroad itself. So that's kind of the backstory to our relationship with railroads in general. And so the long and the short of it is nothing happens quickly, and nothing happens without the full burden of the cost of any improvements made associated with railroads falling on the local government, not the railroad. So there's that portion. Then there's the recognition that railroads in general across the United States, including here in Whatcom County, are actively pursuing a reduction in liability associated with at-grade crossings. That is, they are trying to reduce the number of at-grade crossings as opposed to create new ones. And they are actively doing that by petitioning the UTC to make these closures. And when those petitions come forward, then of course the local government gets involved, and if we protest it, and then there's a hearing, and the UTC, although it has quasi-judicial, that is an administrative judge, makes a ruling on whether the railroad can do it, can close a crossing. It doesn't work the other way. In other words, that judge can't force the railroad to take on a new public crossing, even though they ultimately would have to make the decision to approve the railroad's decision to allow that crossing to occur. And I hope that the difference in those two those two situations is clear. So all of that is to say that that attacking a solution that involves creating a new crossing on the railroad is very likely to result in, is to not satisfy the need. In other words, it will very unlikely be approved. And even if it does, it will be at some very steep cost to the community, which results in a whole nother battle you've got to have in finding priority in this project over other capital needs around the community. So in this particular instance, though, there are some other considerations that have to be that come into play, and one of them is that we have already been made aware from BNSF that they have an intention of closing a number of crossings in Whatcom County, and one of those crossings that has been proposed is either Wynn Road or Country Lane. Now, the railroad, so that was about 3 or 4 years ago at this point when the railroad disclosed their intentions, and they have yet to file the petition for closure. So they have taken no formal action on which we can base any conversation with them, or with them directly or through the quasi-judicial system of the UTC around an opposition or an alternative to that closure. What that means, however, is that there's an opportunity to have a conversation with the railroad should they want something from the local government to be able to potentially, and I say this potentially for a reason that I'll get to in a moment, to potentially say, look, we can find you a way to reduce the liability associated with operating an at-grade crossing on a county road. However, what we want in exchange, we can reduce that, but what we want in exchange is a way to improve conditions, improve safety for bicycles and pedestrians making that crossing. And how that gets done, I can't tell you at this point, because we're now talking not about just a crossing on old Marine Drive, but there's Wynn Road, there's Country Lane, and one of the reasons I am careful to qualify how we might approach this is there will be when that conversation comes forward, there will be a whole group, a whole community whose existing access across the railroad will be affected, will be closed. And you bet that will result in a pretty lively community conversation about whether it's bicycle and pedestrians values that should benefit from this activity, whether it's the railroad's liability concerns that ought to be first, or whether it's the community affected by the closure that we should be fighting for. All of that will have to go through the public process, and decisions will need to be made. I mean, policy decisions by our county council, and our job as Public Works Department, and frankly, your job as the advisory committee, is to inform the council, inform the executive about the implications from a technical standpoint to the extent you can, I mean, as bicyclists and pedestrians, and then ultimately inform their policy decision. That is all completely hypothetical at this point because there has been no filing thus far. So the question about whether, Gary, that you ask about whether there is value in taking this to the UTC and somehow petitioning the UTC on the question of safety. I would submit to you that your committee ought to review that idea in some depth and understand what the likely outcome is. In other words, get yourself to a conclusion. Don't take my word for it, but get yourself to a conclusion as a group as to whether that viable and valuable. And I think you've now witnessed firsthand what happens if you start this conversation and aren't prepared for the outcome. There's likely to be other dominoes in this whole thing that fall. And I would encourage the committee to be very careful about approaching this without a very broad view about how it impacts the rest of the community out there and what actions your request might precipitate. Let me also just make you aware that we, Public Works, have been working with the railroad on behalf of a couple of other communities, including Cliffside and down at Yacht Club, and doing so in collaboration with the city of Bellingham to try and get quiet zones in place at these crossings so that we can reduce the impact of the noise of train whistles blowing all night long that I personally am pretty aware of. In fact, I'm on Lummi Island right now. I can hear them across the water on a pretty regular basis. So I know that sound travels. So there's a complex bureaucratic process that you're seeking to understand more about and make some decisions about how much energy you put into that. And to the extent that we at Public Works can help you inform that, I have to be real honest with you. We have never done this before, so we at Public Works aren't going to be, while we have some experience working with the railroad in other applications, the idea of somehow emplacing an at-grade crossing isn't something we've done before, and so I don't know what the outcome might be. And so let me just take this one step further. So later on in your meeting, I think Jason and Mike are prepared to talk to you at some length about the background, the history behind the entire Marine Drive redevelopment and road widening and multimodal improvements that are underway right now. And I think that part of the story behind that is that we at the County Public Works have recognized the urbanization, the focus on recreational biking, Saturday and Sunday bike groups, greater commuters and all of that that's happening out there. And we want to see these improvements made. And so we've programmed them over the years to begin at the city limits and of course build our way out to the bridge, with the idea that as the closer we get out there, the riper the question about how to get around this impediment, it becomes more ripe, and more people involved in city politics are interested in finding solutions to that as well, so that we can sort of build the pressure. It's a little bit difficult for us at Public Works to just pick this bridge project out of the blue, I should say out of order, from the prospect of our capital program, because, well, it'll become very self-evident once the guys sort of explain the history. Because we haven't done the homework and completed the project out that far to begin with. And of course, if you ride along Marine Drive today, you ride in the travel lane. There is no shoulder that is available for bicycles to even move out of the travel lane if they want. So from a practical standpoint, crossing the bridge is absolutely no different, with the exception that it is hemmed in by those concrete walls that certainly create a less secure sense when you cross the bridge. And however, it is practically speaking no more unsafe than riding in the lane on Marine Drive. It just sure as heck feels a lot less comfortable.
There's a limited lane too. mean,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, we feel that we've got a program in place for making those improvements out Marine Drive. They've been a priority for a long time, and we need to get those improvements done. Jim can talk about where he's at in getting that accomplished, and I think you'd be pleased with that. Meanwhile, I think it makes this question about crossings and bridge and that sort of thing timely to reconsider and bring back up, have some discussions about, understand the details of all of the options, and then come to some conclusions about how the conversation goes from here. Because by the time we get Marine Drive sort of improved over the next 3-4 years out towards the bridge, there will hopefully be at the same time some improved trail improvements that Eileen has been very involved with out next to the airport. If that comes to fruition, and it creates some opportunity for some connections from that improvement there. So that's what I've got today. I expect that this will be a topic over the course of your next, I won't even say several meetings, probably for much of the rest of 2020, as we kind of wade through the depths, plumb the depths of this problem, understand all the implications of the various solutions, and you all make some recommendations on how we move forward. So I will leave it with that and take any sort of policy questions, and then I will, if you will allow me, to defer any of the technical questions to the folks that really know those answers.
Thank you, John. That was a good, thorough history and background. I think I agree. This is probably something we're going to be talking about, throughout the year. Gary, did you have a question? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I just had a couple things I wanted to bring up. Some of you know this, some of you don't. Real quick, simple question, John. You mentioned the railroad possibly wanting to close crossings at Wind Road or Country Lane. Was that an either or are they trying to get both?
They were talking about one.
Okay.
And I think it was Country Lane was the, Jim might know better than me, but I'm pretty sure it was Country Lane that was their target, which is kind of weird to me. It causes a bit of a concern for us because, as you know better than anyone, Gary, that the alignment of Wynn Road as it goes across the approach to the bridge is misaligned, and it is an extremely dangerous intersection there anyway, and it's right at the base of the bridge approach, which is exceedingly steep and has no room for any improvement, any widening, because it's fill up over the railroad tracks. So the prospect of directing local traffic into that intersection and then having them turn out onto Marine Drive at the base of the bridge is, in my mind, is a pretty serious proposition that I can see us being pretty worked up over.
When I know the railroad has closed crossings in the county before, I think out there near Bay Road, I can't think of the exact one.
Yeah.
When they do that, is it closed to all traffic or just vehicle? Would it still allow pedestrian?
Well, that particular, so generally all traffic.
Okay.
Generally speaking. So this, if we took this approach, it would definitely be different.
Yeah. Something I want to point out is the city went through this process to get the crossing at Boulevard Park, and that is a bike and ped crossing. And if we decide to go down this process, they would be, I'm thinking of us in the committee, but also to the professionals here in the room, to think, well, if the city did it, how did they do it? What, what was the lessons learned from what they did would be a suggestion I have. I really like, to put it in my own words, John, maybe a quid pro quo type situation with the railroad. But I'll just end my little comment with, because they blocked off the crossing there, there's no access to the one park this whole area has, which is Cliffside Area Park. That's all blocked off now. Most of the folks I meet in the community are pretty angry, and they don't like walking on the Marine Drive crossing. So what they've been doing is using the Wynn Road. If that gets closed, you're kind of really boxing. I'm not saying you, John, but you know, the railroad is boxing in a community with no access to parks, no access to walking or biking. So the community out here is, you know, really going to be in dire need of some of these bicycle facilities that we're promoting.
Fully understood.
I have a quick question. I wanted to find out, you said that you took this to the county council yesterday, and I was wondering what discussion there was.
Thank you, Eileen, for keeping me on track. That was what I originally indicated I was going to talk about. So yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that I briefed the county council on the conversation we were going to have this evening, and and let them know that because of course they are well aware of the community's concern out there. They've been receiving, you know, tens of emails anyway, and photographs of the new signs and all of that. So they are, you know, on your behalf concerned about the implications. You know, they also understand the realities of local government's relationship with the railroads and with the UTC, and how you know, bureaucratic that whole exercise is, and they also understand the realities of the bridge itself, and that's an important piece of the puzzle that Mike and Jim can talk about in some more detail. The long and the short of it, though, is that the council is very aware of what's happening. They are happy to know that the advisory committee is picking up this concern, and that looking at it in detail in the bigger picture than just simply you know, let's go to the UTC and tell them we need a crossing here. We've got to have a much more like a certain outcome than simply trusting in the bureaucratic process. And I think as much as anybody, you kind of get that. So anyway, they're aware of what's going on, and I think they're quite supportive of the conversation that you're having. So they also have a copy, and we're just very summarily briefed on the information that Jason is going to go over with you this evening, which talks about the accident history and the condition of the bridge and those sorts of things as well. So they're appraised or apprised.
Can I make a comment, please? Can you hear me, Stephen? Can you
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Just a comment. So I certainly, John, can understand animosity that can be brewed if you know, if like Country Lane or Wynn Road is shut down and then a nice little bike crossing, grade crossing is made. But I could see far greater animosity when us dandies in town get all of our crossings quieted, and I'm one of those dandies. I want them quieted too. And then, but yet they fully get one of their crossings taken away. So I can see, like I said, a lot of animosity from the neighbors out there if the city if they get one of theirs taken away. So it seems to me that with that potential animosity, I don't think that should preclude us from looking into the at-grade crossing there, the Smith Gardens right there.
I don't think it should preclude any alternative. I think you should all, you know, really endeavor to understand how it all works, and you know, how big the lift is, what the likely implications of that might be. And I'm not trying to paint that all with a black brush. Just, you know, let me say that out loud. But I will tell you from my own personal experience that that there are, you know, there are some wishes we have that that are this is a really stupid pun, I guess, but it's a, you know, a bit of a bridge too far when we have around our community improvements that we can make, that we know that we can implement and benefit from in the shorter term. So, and that's why I'm saying, you know, let's look at the whole problem, not just rush into a request to the UTC to do something we know that the railroad has to approve first, without understanding what, as Gary put it, the quid pro quo might be. What do they need from us? Let's understand what other alternatives are out there, and let's really understand the argument that we're making, because we need to make that to all of the taxpayers of the road fund, which, by the way, are not citizens of Bellingham, but rather of rural Whatcom County, unincorporated Whatcom County, because that's where the money would come from, likely to pay for that improvement. So, you know, so there are a lot of moving parts that are really worth considering and thinking through, and making sure that we have, you know, strong arguments that mitigate the concerns from the local community members out there, from the rest of the county taxpayers, from the railroad itself. We want the UTC to be happy with the outcome. Ultimately, it will be the county council that makes this policy decision, and they will recognize that whatever they agree to finance there will come from some other priority elsewhere in Whatcom County's transportation system. So, you know, all of those arguments just need to be laid out on a yellow sheet of paper. There need to be good answers for them. And once we sort of get to that point, the conversation becomes far easier, because we bring allies into the conversation instead of people who are distrustful to begin with. And if we're going to be successful in an exercise like this, that is likely to be quite expensive, we need those allies.
John, I have a question. First, thank you so much for talking to us about this. I think it's really helpful for all of us to hear all of the ins and outs politically and policy-wise of what's going on with this crossing. So it sounds like it might make sense for our committee, as we're discussing the airport trail with the port and with that group, of maybe having a plan B, or maybe it becomes a plan A, or some kind of option for that trail to come out at Country Lane or Wynn Road, or somehow connect in there and become the main bicycle pedestrian way to get across.
I think there's great value in having more of that discussion. And once again, I'll say it has been hashed through by many advisory committees before this present one. That said, there has never been a formal plan put forward, nor has there been, and it hasn't been worked into a sort of a comprehensive plan kind of, or a bicycle and pedestrian plan kind of formulation, both with the county and the city, that creates a record of the community's desire to see that kind of development move forward. These kinds of public improvements don't happen, as you're well aware, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but don't happen without all of those administrative steps getting taken. And I call them anti-backsliding measures, right? Because if we don't take those steps, we find we just rehash the same debate and the same analysis over and over again. And that's really what has happened here. So an important question is, if the committee is going to make some kind of recommendation, what steps need to be taken, what small steps need to be taken to make sure that we build toward a formal statement of the communities and then the government's desire to move this forward. And there are a lot of partners in this, right? You mentioned the port. There's still some work to be done with those folks as well. And then you got to butter Jim Karcher up because he's the one designing the new intersection at Marine Drive and Aldrich that would ultimately feed into that. And as you cross Marine Drive there from Marine Drive Park, which is a port park, and then tie in potentially the airport trail. So those are all important components of this conversation.
Just to confirm, you meant Alderwood?
Alderwood, I'm sorry. Yes, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. In terms of getting that project on the tip, would it be included in the Phase 2 Marine Drive improvements, or would it have to be a separate project?
Are we talking about the roundabout or a roundabout? I didn't even say that.
Well, if there's just any way across Marine Drive, if it ends up being through the airport trail, would that be its own separate project?
I will. So the answer is it is in Phase 2. I'm pretty sure. Jim, however, knows the details of where they are in the conceptual sort of picture of that. So that Phase 2 is going to design yet next year. The next step in that is I think they've already designed it and getting ready to build it next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Raise that with Jim.
Okay.
I think I've taken my time up for this round, haven't I?
You get as much time as you want. You're the director.
I think you're done, John.
That's because I keep setting you up for pain later.
I know you're buttering me up like the couch potato I am.
Don't let Jim even sell you on that. He is an active hiker and biker in the whole 9 yards. He's just BSing you. All right, I am going to take my leave if nobody has any more questions and let your meeting continue.
I have a question for you or Jim regarding Jim. Jim mentioned in his introduction that that he became county engineer in March. Am I right about that? I wanted to find out, is this a different role for him than he had previously?
You bet, although not much. So Joe Rutan, the former county engineer here, has taken a job down in Kitsap County, where I think just in recently this week, there was a flyer in their local newspaper down there about his appointment as the assistant director and county engineer for that county. And so Joe made that move right before the COVID thing started, leaving us in a bit of a pickle. Nothing that Joe did, but rather recruiting, going to recruitment for new people actually made our job easier because we had the primo opportunity to ask Jim to step into that job, and Jim has been the go-to design and construction engineer for the road program for how many years, Jim?
I think 19 years, John.
There you go. So this guy has built or had a hand in just about every improvement Whatcom County has designed and constructed for the last 20 years. So Jim is a wonderful person and very conscientious. And yes, he's not a couch potato.
Congratulations, Jim.
Congratulations. That's great.
And I want to thank Gary and John for their long and clear explanation of all this. It was very good.
Yep. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Gary. Did you make any more cider this year?
Yeah, it's right behind me here, fermenting in the. Oh, I can't say that. It's a being recorded.
All right. If any of you ever get to enjoy some of Gary's homemade cider, you should take him up on that. All right, guys. Gary, thank you so much. We'll talk some more later. And Sonia, Steve, thank you for having me. And the rest.
Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for being here. Good night.
Good night.
Well, Sonia, since we're kind of re-scrambling this, would this be a good time maybe to talk about the letter, the VPAC letter on the marine project?
Yes.
Or are we going to go to Jason, those guys, to talk about the larger phase 1, phase 2?
Why don't we talk about Gary's petition? I think that relates pretty closely to what's going on here. And then we'll talk about our letter of support, and then maybe Jason can give his update.
Sounds good.
Okay. Gary, are you able to share your screen so we can read the letter, or do you want to read it to us?
Yeah, I can share screen. Let me do that. And you should be now seeing, tell me.
Yep, I can see it. Can everyone else see it?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I will first say this was an idea I had, but I had lots of help on the wordsmithing from Sonia and Steve and Jason. But yeah, you've got to, of course, take into appreciation that we're still in some COVID restrictions, and haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do this. But if you all want to read that.
Let me back up 1 second, Gary, just for if anybody's new or missed the last iteration. This is a petition to slow the speed limit on Marine Drive over the bridge to hopefully make it safer for bicycles and pedestrians as they're crossing. So that was the one thing that doesn't probably take a lot of money, if any. It's not anything physical that has to change on the bridge, but it's a way to slow down the traffic as they're crossing.
Thank you, Sonia. I guess sometimes I realize not everybody's living in my little world here. Yeah, that being said, I think later Jason will be showing a presentation that will give you an idea of how narrow, those of you that aren't familiar with the crossing out there, how really narrow the walkway, if you want to call the gravel shoulder that, is. And it can be really intimidating to folks walking a pet. I think the worst case scenario is seeing somebody trying to push a baby stroller in that area, which I have seen quite a few times. So the idea is to petition the folks that live in the vicinity of that area. I was thinking, of course, Marine Drive itself, Old Marine Drive on both, well, it's just a business on the one side, but where Smith Gardens is, but the other side of Old Marine Drive towards the city, if you will. And then like Wynn Road and Bancroft and Fort Bellingham Road. So this is what it's reading. If everybody, I don't need to read it for you unless somebody's got a bad connection.
Gary, would you know how many households there are in that area that you're talking about circulating the petition?
You know, I'm just shooting from the hip. I would say 25 to 30.
That's all?
Well, depending, maybe later Jason or Jason, I think is listening, can tell us how far we need to go. But the area I mentioned, if we did Bancroft, Old Marine, Marine Drive itself, I don't know how far we need to go down, but that's what I've got. And then the actual mechanism for deploying it, when many folks might not be ready to receive some dude knocking on their door with a petition to sign, I haven't quite figured out how we're going to do that. So
I have one question. This might be more for Jason. Is there any benefit, or would the county take into consideration people signing the petition who work at Smith Gardens? I think there's roughly 400 people who work there.
So I think the council takes into consideration everyone who signs the petition. They tend to give more weight to people who are directly affected by it. So if you live in the area, you're going to be directly affected by the speed limit. You have a history with the roadway, how things are, you know, going back quite a ways. So I think they tend to listen more to the people who live in the area rather than people who commute through it. We found that in the past to be the case in some of the other petitions that we've received. But that isn't to say that they would disregard anything that comes from the public.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Not to split hairs, Jason, but would there be a difference from folks who commute through it to folks who commute to it?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, if I was commuting through this area, I would be maybe coming from Bellingham and going to Lummi Island. If I was a person coming from Bellingham to my place of employment at Smith Gardens, that would be I'm commuting to it. So I guess to go along with Sonia's idea, yeah, there's a big population of people who commute to the Smith Gardens over that bridge and would be directly affected by the speed limit. And I guess the question is, would that be worth going to the trouble of going to Smith Gardens business and asking for their opinion?
That's a good question. Just,
yeah, I really don't have an answer for that. I don't know.
Okay, all right. Guess it couldn't hurt.
Quick question from what, Marine Drive? Where is it? I'm sorry, I'm looking for the bank. Is it from Bancroft to Old Marine Drive? Is that, yeah, there it is. How far is that? Quarter mile or?
I would say that is probably over a third of a mile, less than a half.
Okay. I wonder, I'm curious just if it would help convince people just to give a numeric description of, you know, how much more time that would take, like what, maybe an extra 15, 20 seconds or something like that. Just kind of wondering about that. And maybe I wonder if something about the bridge is not modifiable in its current state and there is no plan for a new bridge for, I think I read, what, 15 years at least, something like that. So I'm just thinking of questions people might have.
I'm going to jot that down, not modifiable.
To answer your question, Pete, we actually did the math. Let me find it. It was from Bancroft to Alderwood is a distance of 0.9 miles. If it was reduced to 25 miles per hour, it would take 49 seconds longer. So under a minute longer.
Is it Alderwood or Old Marine?
The math that Sonia did was from Alderwood. My petition currently is listing Old Marine, which is about a block and a half difference. So,
yeah. So which, I mean, to be determined whether it's going to be Old Marine or Alderwood?
Well, I had some offline conversations with Jason, and, you know, being he's a traffic professional, I think the county doesn't like to do this up, down changing of speeds, and they'd prefer to have more of a, you know, consistent thing. So I think we were erring on the side of actually longer of a zone of this 25 mile an hour suggested speed limit reduction. But yeah, that's what I know.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing because I'm not a share bear anymore.
All right, thank you, Gary. Eileen, you have a question?
Gary, you had mentioned, I think at one of our previous meetings, that you might reach out to Ben Ellenboss, and that was his district. Have you done that?
I haven't. As you could kind of understand from John Hutchins' comments, a lot of people in this community have reached out to county council directly about this, so they're aware. And that's a good question for the group. Do you think it's? I'm a citizen of the district of the county that Ben Ellenboss represents. I reached out to him when he was running to get his opinion, and he actually was very responsive to my email. Would you? I don't know if it's for me as a private citizen to do that, or what do you guys think about that?
I think that it would be great to get his support. If you could, maybe do a walkthrough.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm hearing music. Does that mean we're gonna be cut off here in a minute? No.
Well, excuse me, it took me a while to get my unmuted thing. Could this be something that we as a group could approach Ben on? Just a question.
Maybe both. I mean, Patrick, you and I are, I'm assuming you're in his district, right? Am I muted?
Gotta unmute myself. Yes, but Ben is not my kind of guy anyhow, but.
Well, not to get into politics, but you have to dance with the person at the ball there, you know, so.
You're right.
I think what we can do as a group, officially coming from BPAC, is a letter of support, Gary, for your petition, which I actually was going to share next. I think whatever we do as a group, we all need to vote on and just make sure that we're not doing anything that's under the radar, that's, doesn't follow the public disclosure rules. So maybe if you talk to Ben and get his support, he will be one ally that we have on the council when we decide that we should go to the council as a group with our plan after we've had some time to formulate one.
Totally agree. And I think out of respect for his position for that district, something in his district, he should be, if he's not on board, he should at least be fully aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that approach. It's good.
Great. Okay. So let's see. I think it's my turn to share the screen. Did anyone else have anything about Gary's petition particularly?
So what are we going to do right now? I'm totally supportive of the petition, and I didn't know whether it's something that Gary is going to just start doing, getting signatures, or is he waiting for us to endorse it and then go get signatures?
I think both of those things. We're planning, if everybody is supportive, Stephen and I have written a letter of support for it that we can vote on. We can take people's comments on tonight. And that would accompany the petition once Gary gets all the signatures. So those two things would go together to Mr. Karcher at Public Works. Does that help, Eileen?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is, what is micro mobility devices?
Scooters, skateboards, wheelchairs, things that are not cars.
Okay, and that's a technical term? Because I'd never heard of that before.
It's what some active transportation professionals are now using.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will just scroll down and let everybody read it, and if you have thoughts, feel free to share them.
Sonia, the question I have is a 35 plus. Perhaps Jason could weigh in. So the speed limit there is 40, and I know the county has done, I don't know if you call it a study or whatever you call that, where you measure what the average speed is. And I believe that was 44. So that
maybe it should be 40 plus.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's my bad. I thought it was a 35 zone. It's 40. You're right. Pete?
Yeah, just the only thing that I'm not really comfortable with is ethnic minorities. I think if we just say many of those employees may not have access to a vehicle, I don't know. I just don't see the importance of having that in there.
That's fine. The state, the reason, well, I might give you some background. The reason I put that in there, the state active transportation grants are giving extra points to projects that have a higher percentage of people that are minorities and or below the poverty line. So I don't know if that would help at all, but I'm happy to remove that.
Oh, I mean,
possibly irrelevant.
If there's a reason for it to be there, I mean, that just kind of struck me. I didn't.
You're probably right. It's probably irrelevant.
I don't know. I think it might add to it.
You think okay? Anyone else?
I'll weigh in. I think it's important to address kind of equity concerns in some of our more marginalized communities. And I mean, I think, you know, in the spirit of the moment right now, I think it's on the front of everyone's mind. And if we can find a way to relate our work to that, I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly wasn't at all weighing in on of course I'm fully supportive of equality. My only point in saying that was that, you know, there are people who are, anybody could not have a vehicle. I mean, or anybody could choose to not ride a vehicle. I mean, that's my only point in saying that. So
yeah,
really don't know what.
You're right, Pete. You're absolutely right. I think just anybody who doesn't have access to a vehicle needs a safe crossing. So.
And you need to if you're taking that out, then I would say you need to take out the and not all.
Thank you. There we go.
But I do think it strengthens it to have that in, so.
Okay, well, maybe we'll put it back in.
I guess one question would be, is there a downside to leaving it in? And it doesn't seem like there is. And that, you know, that way it gets away from, is it a good, does it strengthen it or not? I don't know, but is there a downside? If there's not a downside, then, you know, why not leave it in?
That's reasonable, Stephen. So I guess the next step, if everybody thinks this is a thing that they want to support, we would need a motion that we're going to send this letter along with Gary's petition, and then someone to second it, and we could take a vote on it.
I move to that we approve the letter and the petition.
Thanks, Eileen. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Pat Ellison.
Thanks, Pat. All those in favor, unmute yourselves, please, and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed, unmute yourself and say nay. Okay, motion passes. We will send this letter along with Gary's petition. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sonia, for all that work.
Sure. Okay, so now let me go back to the agenda. Stephen, where are we? Are we gonna hear from Jason now, I think?
Well, yeah, it's kind of obviously it's mixed up from the agenda, but yeah, it sounds like to keep with the flow, maybe we should have Jason give his spiel that kind of relates to Marine Drive projects, phase 1 and 2.
Okay. Does that work for you, Jason? Okay. Excellent.
So I guess the first thing I'll start with is the memo that John requested traffic to send to him. This was just sort of an all-encompassing thing. We started with Gary's PowerPoint and went through everything in there, and then some other requests that we've had related to the bridge. Mike and I met with Jim Karcher out at the bridge. We sort of went through every request. And then we provided this to John in order for him to go to the council with it. You know, here's what we have done. Here's what we're looking at. You know, the speed limit request and the speed limit petition, we will, once that's in, we will follow up and put together an engineering review based on that petition. I think I've told you in the past that from an engineering standpoint, the 40-mile-per-hour speed limit is what we would support. But that doesn't mean that the council can't override that engineering judgment. So some of the things that, if I want to go through everything, because that would probably take the rest of the time. So I'll highlight the things that we can do. So the edge markers, we had talked about removing those black and yellow signs that kind of hinder a pedestrian movement onto that bridge curb or bridge sidewalk. We can do that. I've talked to the bridge and hydraulic group. They're not opposed to it. I've talked to maintenance. They're fine with us doing that. And we've talked with Jim and he's in support of that. So we'll work to get those removed. We'll probably be putting up a 2-foot-high orange tube with retroreflective stripes on it. That will be on the inside of that curb, so it won't be on the actual bridge curb. So it should provide a little extra space there for people to get up and onto that by removing that obstruction. So should the speed limit petition pass, then we can look at the prospect of doing sharrows. So Jim has let us know that he is in support of sharrows. Currently, with the 40-mile-per-hour speed limit, we cannot do sharrows according to our manual on uniform traffic control devices. But if that passes, that's certainly something we can look at doing in the future. It's probably going to require us in traffic to come up with a standard for it, or we adopt the city's standard for sharrows. We don't currently have any. We don't have a standard on it, so it would take some time for us to look at everything engineering wise and adopt some form of standard for that. So one of the things that in conversations actually with John, he had suggested was, is there any way that we can remove that bridge curb and just open up the shoulder there to make a larger way? And yesterday I got word from our bridge group, they had looked at it. We can't do that. It would require basically pouring a new bridge deck to do that. That concrete is intertwined with what the guardrail hooks to on the side, that bridge rail. And so anything cut out of there or removed would cause us to do a whole bunch more work to the bridge deck there. So that's not really feasible. We had that freeze indicator removed from the shoulder there earlier this year.
Thank you.
And I think that hits the highlights of of what we've talked about we can do. Jim had indicated that currently we're not going to look at doing increased maintenance to the shoulders there as far as, or not the shoulders, to the bridge. We feel like it's cleaned at a good rate by maintenance, that just fiscally that increasing that maintenance is not something that we can do right now. So that's some of the highlights. If there's any questions on any of the other items, either tonight or in the future, feel free to ask, and I'm happy to answer questions on that.
Jason, thank you for putting all that together. That was super helpful to see kind of the history of what we have been asking to do and what's possible and what's not possible. So I really appreciate that. I wanted to make one comment on the sharrows. I really liked how they were drawn with the green box around them. I think that highlights better than how the city does it with just the white paint on the ground. So I know you haven't adopted a standard yet, but if there's the possibility of putting that green paint with the white paint, I think that would be great.
And I'm assuming that anything we do with the standard for that, we will ask you guys to weigh in on, because you are the committee that deals with bicycle and pedestrian things. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Jason, just to confirm, did I understand it, the county has not done any sharrows yet anywhere?
Correct. I see Jim has his hand up.
Go ahead, Jim.
So I would just like to maybe have just a little bit more discussion on the speed limit and the petition, because I just want the committee to know that, you know, if you go to the trouble to get this petition, how that plays out in the whole process of us coming out, maybe not in favor of it in a technical viewpoint. And I don't want to, you know, I think that we just need to be very candid about that issue. The other issue is, how do we patrol that and enforce that speed limit? So I want to, you know, just Jason, if you wouldn't mind having just a little bit of a, or Mike, either of you guys, a little bit of a relay on how we've seen these develop before. It's not to say that wouldn't be supported, because the sharrows tie into that. I told Jason and Mike, and we talked about this at the site, and we said, well, you can't really put sharrows down because that implies that it's a safer condition, and it's, you know, the traffic will be able to accommodate the bikes easily, and they could at a lower speed limit, but not at the higher speed limit currently posted. So, you know, I just see this kind of heading down this path where we put the petition in, it's denied, and it's like, doggone it, why didn't you guys tell us that that would happen? Or, you know, so I don't see that. I just like to be very candid about that.
Jim, if the speed limit wasn't reduced, you couldn't put in sharrows, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So that whole area is double yellow. Am I correct in my assumption that if you're passing a bike on a double yellow, you're breaking the law? Is that correct?
I don't know, Gary. I would say that if there is room for you to get around the bike and there's no one coming in the other direction, then you're not breaking the law. You're just moving around the bicycle to allow a 4 foot or, you know, a shy distance around the bicycle, which is also a state law. So I think that there would be compensation given, but if you get into an accident moving around the bike, then you should have stayed behind the bike all the way across the bridge and not tried to pass if there was oncoming traffic. I think that's how the law would go, that you would be cited if you got into a collision crossing the center line because you couldn't wait to, you know, get around either a pedestrian or bicycle.
Yeah, your words are appreciated, because if we go on all the trouble, because let's face it, it's going to be some door knocking, and you know, it's not going to be easy to do this. And then if there's going to be a law that's not enforced anyways, could we ask for better law enforcement for existing laws, which is when you're in a double yellow, you're not allowed to pass, which people do that every single day.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a solution that can, you know, a lot of people know that there's bikes out there, that it's it's a very popular bike route. But standing out there a week and a half ago, it was not, you know, there was a lot of speed through there, and there was a number of vehicles that were slower, and we saw a lot of bikes going up and over the bridge or coming down the other way. So I know motorists are conscious of that, and they try to, you know, probably the savvier ones know that and are careful and think about it when they're coming up to that location. But I'm trying to think what solution we could do short of putting in a lowered speed limit that really isn't gonna, you know, the public's gonna ignore. Because I would see that happening, to be honest with you guys, because here they are, they're cruising at 40, and then they come towards the bridge, and then are they gonna lower down to 25? I'm not sure that they will.
No, I agree with you, Jim.
Hand up, Jason. Jason, do you have your hand up?
On
Yeah,
the speed limit.
this is Mike. I've been here quite a few years and gone through quite a few petitions. I think what we should do is have some dialogue with the sheriff's department. So just not to be bureaucratic, just talk about how they would enforce this, because it is like a 40 to a 25. I think we should just talk, you know, with the sheriff department and have some dialogue with them too. Yeah. And so you guys, just kind of a quick question too, because through the years, I've been here a number of years. You are in favor of like Sharrows? That would.
When they're respected.
It's a tough call. Like what it was mentioned, they kind of give the illusion of safety, maybe when there isn't actual safety. But I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Well, it seems to me that, you know, when you think about, there's other situations that are safety zones, like if you have a school, you have an elementary school, they lower the speed limit, and there aren't sheriffs sitting out there with a you know, speed gun enforcing it. They find other ways a lot of times, and one of the ways I've seen is speed bumps, as an example. If it's considered truly a priority for the community to slow people down there, recognizing that police can't be there all the time. So I don't know if that's you know, something like that is an option, whether it's you know, those buttons in the road, they're kind of bumps that people go over to get them to slow down a little bit, or an actual speed bump that if you go over it faster than 25, you're gonna, you know, rake the bottom of your car, or whatever gets people to slow down. And again, I don't know if that's an option that the county would even consider, but it does seem like there are ways to deal with this if we wanted to, if it was a serious concern about people's safety.
I just want to ask a question as well. Just thinking of other options, I don't think there is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, the yellow signs that have kind of the suggested speed limit, or like you might want to take this a little bit slower, like you'll see like a 15-mile-an-hour curve when you can probably easily go 25. Is there anything out there like that? And if the speed limit thing didn't go through and the trailers didn't go through, could we at least have one of those yellow signs like, hey, you might want to slow down to 25 here?
You're talking like an advisory sign?
Yeah.
Advisory speed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've done that at curves. Yeah. Do you have something?
So in the curves, there's a specific criteria for it. I'd have to look at it and see if there's some sort of criteria that would apply to the bridge. It is somewhat in a horizontal curve there, but it's likely that it would be signed for advisory speed for a curve if we had that condition already. But we can certainly look at it and see if there's something that would apply there. I'm not sure that there is.
Obviously, that wouldn't slow everybody down, but it would have some kind of an impact, some kind of a positive impact, I would think. So,
Can I throw an idea in the mix here? What about sensors that be on the bridge that would flash yellow when a pedestrian or person riding a bike was going through it? Who's that? Okay.
For bikes, a slow vehicle detector.
Yeah.
I think Mike can comment. You were kind of the man behind that, weren't you? That's what's there, right?
Yes, that came in years ago. That's when Rodney was the traffic tech too. We worked through that. And yes, and it seems to work pretty good when we were out there last week. It seems to identify the bikes coming up. It gives that flash, yes.
Robin, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is a question that Jason, Mike, or Jim could probably answer. When you said that the lowered speed limit would not be supported by Public Works, I am wondering what the criteria is that the county uses, or that you're thinking that it wouldn't be supported. Is it the 85% rule, or is it just wanting to have longer stretches of the same speed, or some other criteria like lack of accidents or something like that? What are your main criteria that you use to decide whether you're going to support a lowered speed limit or not?
So we strictly go by an engineering evaluation of it, and that's something that would be presented to the council, likely by Jim, as we've done all the work to look at it. And that's not to say that we've done everything and looked at everything so far, because we haven't received the petition. So, but it's a combination of all those things. Collision history, which, as you can see from the document that that I attached earlier today, there really isn't a collision history on the bridge. And going back years, which is more than twice as far as we would normally go back to look at collisions. In the last 3 years, there's one collision on the bridge. That was someone fleeing law enforcement. So when we look at collision perspective, it's not something that we would say, we have a collision history where, we would support it because of that. So we'll look at all of that and provide that engineering data.
Okay, I'd like
to specifically use the 85% rule in the county.
So in traffic engineering, we use the 85 percentile speed to set speed limits, but the council can override that. And all speed limits are set via the council anyways. So they can choose to do something, like I said earlier, against engineering judgment and they can support a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's not to say that traffic will actually go that fast, because what we find is that traffic tends to go the speed at which they feel comfortable, regardless of the limits that we've set. So like Mike had said earlier, a robust enforcement of that is what gets people to slow down. If the speed limit changes to 25 and we don't do, or the sheriff's department doesn't do enforcement, people are going to go 45 or close to it in that vicinity. But when you hit people in the wallet, that's when they start to obey the speed limits.
Yeah, we could sell this as a revenue generating thing for the county,
Eileen, did you have?
Yeah. I guess I don't really buy the argument that we shouldn't lower the speed limit because it can't be enforced, because I'm thinking about the speed limit change that not too long ago went in on Samish Way, Old Samish Way, over by Galbraith. And that went, there's just a section that goes from 50 to 35. And I don't know to what extent that's being enforced. But I think that is a really good thing, and I would love to see this happen.
I agree. Speed limit enforcement anywhere is scant, in my experience. So you have it up there, at least it's going to have a positive impact on slowing down traffic.
Alec?
Yeah, I would just second what Eileen just said, that it sounds like we're at this point because we've exhausted all of our other options, and you know, this isn't our ideal scenario, and the Sharrows aren't really either. But I think, you know, we're looking for something to do, and even if it might not work, who knows? We don't know that. It might. And so I think we should try it.
Okay, Gary, how are you feeling about going forth with a petition and putting all that work into getting the signatures for it?
I'm for it. I'm going to go for it. You know, I can appreciate what Mike and Jason said, but at the same time, somebody brought up the example of a school district. I think my gut feeling as both a bicycle rider and a car driver is, you see a sign, you easily obey it. You know, sure, there's people that don't, but it'll help. I think it will certainly help. So to answer your question, I'm gonna go forward with trying to get some signatures going.
Okay, great.
So one other thing is that all speed limit petitions receive a hearing with the council, regardless of whether Public Works supports the speed limit or not. And that gives a time where residents can come in, use their 3 minutes to lend their support to it. And you guys can lend your support to it when there's a public hearing on it, for sure.
Okay, great. Will you let us know when that is, or should we just keep an eye on the council agendas after the petition is submitted? Or how do we find out about it?
I could certainly let you know when that comes up.
Okay, that would be great.
Jason, I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse, but is there a minimum number of signers that are needed for a petition to go before the county council?
That I'm aware of, but obviously the more you have behind something, the more credit they're going to give to it.
Okay, thank you.
Quick thing, please, everybody. I just want to, just for the record, I want to clarify earlier statement about the ethnic minorities. So my point in talking about that was, I feel that I don't want to perpetuate any socioeconomic connection to the micro transportation, to bicycles, to walking. I don't think there should be any connection. We shouldn't advocate for any connection to to riding bikes and socioeconomic status, and certainly not people of color within that just people of color who are socioeconomically disadvantaged can operate or should be operating bicycles and cars. So that is my only point in bringing this up. I'm certainly fully well versed and supportive in all things currently political and what's going on with Black Lives Matter and this and that. So I just wanted to make that clear. Does that make sense to everybody, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for saying that, Pete.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
I don't think anyone was questioning your credibility on this.
I know, but I just wanted to make sure my point was clear instead of just like rattling on about something, you know?
No problem.
Thank you.
So then I guess the last thing I had was we submitted to you guys today the 60% plan for the design of Marine Drive from Locust Avenue to Alderwood Avenue. That includes bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides, a mid-block pedestrian crossing between Cliffside Drive and Alderwood Avenue to allow access to the Port of Bellingham's park there. And if you guys have comments on it, like I said in the email, if you could kind of get those to me within the next week or so, I will forward those on to the engineer. And if there's questions that he needs to answer, we can get you answers back to that.
Thank you, Jason.
And,
I think that's going to be awesome to have sidewalks and bike lanes on that section and a crosswalk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jim Karcher
Awesome.
here. I would just add that We're not going to go through the intersection. John misspoke that we're going to go up to Alderwood, but we're not going to go through the intersection, nor are we going to channelize that intersection because it did not meet warrants for channelization. But we're hearing rumblings about the port, and we're not sure what the port's position is for their runway issue there and whether they want to do any changes to Alderwood. So we didn't want to sink a bunch of money into that intersection and then have them say, well, we want something a little different here. I don't know if that's just hearsay, but that's just a hedge. The other thing is I'm planning on commenting on that crosswalk. So just keep it in mind when you're looking at that plan set that I would like to probably maybe see it moved away from the intersection a little bit more, because when people are turning out from Alderwood, I don't want them to be, you know, just backing up there trying to figure out what's going on with the crosswalk and how do I make my turn movement here. So I want to just make sure that we get another second opinion on that from the traffic engineering firm, the traffic sub-consultant, that this is the safest location. So just a caution on that. That may change, probably not by much, maybe won't change at all. Maybe they've evaluated that, but it just caught my eye when I first looked at it.
And so Jim, our understanding is that because that intersection is not going to be dealt with in phase 1, then that's automatically going to be dealt with in phase 2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then phase 2 would go from Alderwood to the bridge.
Yes.
Jim, what's your thoughts on, I don't know if it would be signage would probably be the answer for the transitioning from a nice bike lane sidewalk area to nothing?
Yeah, that's a good question, Gary. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't have any thoughts right off the top of my head. And, you know, and I would go to Mike and Jason and say, hey, guys, what do you think here?
Yeah, I don't know what the sign rules are, but certainly something saying bike lane ending, bikes entering roadway, anything that, you know, that takes that very nice thing you guys have planned. Thank you very much. But to status quo on the other side of Alderwood.
Yeah, you know, maybe we'll just be in touch with the BPAC. We know your concerns, so we'll be able to, you know, I can't promise anything, but maybe if there's a big issue here and it's so dramatic that we may have to look at some interim measures until that project comes through.
So what we've done, what's out there now where the bike lane ends is a end bike lane sign. Further past Alderwood to the west, we have a bicycle warning sign with a share the road plaque. And that's probably what we would look at doing closer to the intersection there.
Right. Thank you. For the sake of time, should we move on to try and grab the last few things, Sonia?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just looking at my agenda to see what the last few things are.
Right. Well, do you want to mention the grant that you had identified?
Yeah, we identified a grant from WashDOT for the bike ped. It was a bike ped grant that they're giving about $18 to $19 million for, and a Safe Routes to School grant that's roughly the same amount. Both of those applications are due in July. And so we had a conversation with the staff about identifying projects that might work for those grant applications. So that is, I think we sort of settled on Marine Drive, phase 1 and phase 2 for getting some money for design. With the crash history, I'm not sure that it's going to qualify because I think it's 40% of the grant points are awarded for safety improvements. But anyway, we're working on trying to get some grants and get some state money for some of these projects that we're hoping to have done.
What about the California Creek Bridge?
That one is not, so was that one on the tip? Because I think we were reduced to only having projects that are on the tip can qualify for the grants.
Could it be added?
The tip, I believe, we might check with Mike, has projects added towards the end of the year in the fall.
Right, September.
So I think that's something that our committee should probably get on our agenda in the next couple months and figure out if we have a couple priority projects that we would like to see added to the tip.
But that would be too late for the July deadline.
I'm sorry, yeah, it would be. Yeah. Yeah.
What about the Safe Routes to School grant?
Nothing that I recall was in the tip that would have qualified for that as well.
Are you sure that it absolutely has to be in the tip?
It has to be. That's one of the requirements. I listened to the webinar for the grant application. They had a 2-hour session on all the details of what is acceptable and what's not. It has to be in a local or regional tip or added to a tip before the application process is over.
Is there any precedent for adding projects to the tip outside of that time frame?
I don't know. Jason or Mike, do you know if there's a precedent for adding projects to the tip for grant purposes?
Well, on the tip that comes in to council in the fall, and is that still the same, Jim? It is in October, November time?
It is. It's probably adopted in September. And whether there's a precedent or not, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but we have added projects to the tip, but it's been at the council's, it's been through the council process. And the tip can be amended by a majority versus the annual construction program, which is the first year of the 6-year tip, takes a unanimous council vote. So say we adopt the tip in September and you want to apply for something in 2021 by July, then you would petition you would make your recommendation through the BPAC to Jason, and then we'd look at that, and if there is if there's good reason to add it and we think we have council support, or there is something that's gone on with council to convince them that this is a needed project, then they could add it through bringing that tip forward. I can tell you though, as from September on to the end of the year, not to discourage you, but it gets tougher and tougher to get on council with things. I mean, we always can, but it's like we got the tip, we got the annual construction program, we got the budget. So those are all colliding at the end of the year. And there's only one council meeting in December and only one in August. The rest of the months have 2 council meetings. Does that help, Eileen?
Yes. What is the grant actually that you're talking about, Sonia?
It's from the WashDOT Active Transportation Department, and they have a bicycle pedestrian grant and a Safe Routes to School grant. I don't know more specifically what you mean.
Okay. And it's for, well, maybe you could send us some information on like what types of projects would qualify.
Sure, I can do that. Jim, I have a question about the tip getting adopted. If the BPAC group wanted to identify 1 or 2 or 3 projects that we felt strongly about getting on the tip, when is the best time to talk to staff about that? And who do we talk to? Is that something we should talk to John about?
Sonia, I think that, through the BPAC at this, with Jason as the liaison, that would be the avenue. And then we'd bring it in. And what I'll do is I'll be reviewing the draft 6-year tip with John and the executive and most likely our M&O group, because they're a big player in the maintenance. So that's typically how that process goes. The engineering group, traffic, design, construction, bridge and hydraulic, assemble the projects, get that ready. We meet with John, we go through that. Things are vetted for like worthy overlay projects based on pavement analysis, intersections based on level of service, bridges based on structural sufficiency or structural deficient bridges rather. And then that's brought before John and the executive, and then they go through it and then present it to council. That's kind of how it's, just an overview of how it's done. Does that help?
Okay, and yeah, that helps. Thank you. And when does your review process start? What month?
Now,
Now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
Okay, Stephen, what do we have next?
Well, the only other things we could mention would be, you know, you and I had a couple meetings just to give people background that we were trying to get things kind of started and how we queued up some of this stuff. And then also just if anyone else has any other ideas about what we might want to be working on over the next few months, at least start that conversation. We're not going to resolve that today, but I think get people thinking about some things as a BPAC we may want to focus on the next few months.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I can just let everyone know we met with Cliff Strong. He's the county planner. I think back in March, maybe. And he was really helpful in telling us that we should be looking for grants and sort of how things need to go through council first. So he's our contact, our new contact in planning. And then we have been keeping in touch with Jason and Mike. And
John.
who else?
John.
Stephen, I think that's about it.
And John was at that meeting. We had a meeting with him too. This was all pre-COVID, so we didn't have masks on or anything. We had great meetings. We could see each other's faces and everything. It was great.
Yeah, one thing we did talk about with John and Mike was our work plan and creating a map of destinations in the county, and I have not forgotten about that. I've updated the map with everyone's feedback on where the destinations should be, and maybe at the next meeting we can talk about some preferred bicycle routes to those places as well.
And I think that kind of leads us into this final topic, which is, I think, just to cue it up of more than anything, maybe given the time and all, that we should just, I'm asking everybody to start thinking about what we want to, what are our priorities of the next few months, you know, and recognizing that because of the COVID-19, we're probably going to be limited in what we can do and how we can do it, and that's not going to go away in the next few months. It's, we're talking about possibly another even round of shutdowns in the fall, supposedly. So I think being realistic about that, but what would you all like to see us focus on and try and get accomplished as BPAC over the next, say, 6 months? And what does that look like? And maybe this, we don't need to have that conversation now. We can just start thinking about it and start collecting ideas before our next meeting, perhaps. What do you think, Sonia?
I think that is a great idea. Maybe to add some direction to that, I know in the fall, Parks and Recreation updates their comp plan. And we've been invited to add any trail projects that we feel strongly about on their comp plan. If any routes have changed, I know we talked about possibly wanting the Beta Baker Trail rerouted so that it's along Highway 542 instead of along the old railroad grade, which has been gobbled up by private property now and doesn't really have a good right-of-way. So maybe think about projects that we could talk about for adding to that comp plan. And then I guess if we want to see anything on the tip, it sounds like that is, those discussions are happening right now, and we should definitely be talking about that at our next meeting as well.
I have a question for you, Sonia.
Yes.
You and Stephen seem to be getting the County Parks Department more involved with our group, and I was just wondering, is that continuing, and why aren't they involved tonight?
I'm on the Parks Commission as well, so I meet with, we haven't been meeting because of COVID, but we have I think a meeting set up in July, and I am inviting them. They're always invited to our meetings, but I'm specifically asking them to come when we're talking about a parks related trail that's not on the right of way. So if I know that we're going to have a conversation, say about the Beta Baker Trail or the Nooksack Loop Trail or something that is more in their wheelhouse and less in Public Works wheelhouse, I will make sure that they came to that.
I'd maybe like to put the Beta Bay Trail needs on our next agenda.
Okay. And actually, that reminds me, Stephen, we talked to Eileen about having an update on the Beta Bay Trail and any ways that people in our group could help them. Do you want to talk about that tonight, or?
I can, since we're kind of running out of time, why don't I just send out an email to people?
Okay.
To our group.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, look for an email from Eileen. I think that's about all I have.
Yeah.
Anybody else
want to add anything to this as we're wrapping up?
I raised my hand. I don't know
Alec?
if anybody saw it or not. I just
Sorry.
experimented. But, you know, at Birch Bay, one route I suggest to people who are bikers actually goes down and behind the refinery. I don't even know if you guys know it's there. And it's there because, long story, I won't go into that. But I feel like it's there already, and I'd love to have some recognition for it. It's an area that you can walk through and
Patrick,
bike through.
can
I put it on a map?
That would be great.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. If you could highlight that on a map. I think I've been on that trail, but if you could
I was on it just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's great.
Yep.
Yeah, put it on a map and we'll see if we can get it added to our general bike map.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Alec, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I think I had probably had this as an agenda item for our March meeting before the pandemic. But I'm still sitting on the transportation work group for the county's climate action committee, and they're, as you probably know, developing a climate action plan and hoping to have that done in the fall time. So in the transportation work group, we've identified a number of strategies, and we've compiled just a huge list of potential strategies that we're hoping to organize into specific goals. And one of the goals that I'm kind of spearheading is the enhancing transit and multimodal transportation options. And that includes bicycles and pedestrian infrastructure and any strategy or measure related to biking and walking. So I want to consult this committee on the strategies that we're going to be considering, and basically ask for your input on what you would like to see in that plan, and just like whatever feedback you can give. But we're still a little bit early in the process for that, I think. So once we whittle down our strategies a little bit more and refine them, I'd like to bring a list to this committee and basically see, which ones you would support or prioritize, or if there are any strategies we can put in the climate action plan that specifically pertain to supporting the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee's work. So I don't know if that will be ready for the next meeting, but we're getting closer. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that's where we're at.
Thanks, Alec. That's cool. And maybe make sure to email Stephen or myself before the meeting where you would like to be on the agenda, and we'll add you.
Okay, cool.
All right. This seemed like it went fairly smoothly today. I was telling Sonia I was expecting we'd have at least some problems, given this is our first run with this, and the IT folks at the county there were very helpful in getting this all set up, and they've been, looks like they're still on kind of monitoring, making sure we didn't run this off the road. So I appreciate all their help, and thank you so much for everyone for calling in. I know it's this is obviously a different route, and it's gonna be harder to share treats from now on. We're doing this virtually. But at some point we will hopefully be able to meet in person again, and we can resume the tradition that we have started a long time ago.
Hopefully Gary could bring some of that cider that I heard about earlier.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And I
So
may,
are there any other final comments or questions?
I thought the meeting went very well. It was easy to see you. I'm on mute, so, and I am blocked out. I could actually sneak into the bathroom while this meeting went on, but I didn't flush the toilet because I wasn't sure about the mute.
That's probably more we needed to know, Patrick. Thank you.
I'll give you more than you need to know.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys.
all right.
Good night.
Night.